I'm Matthew Phillips from Sine Nomine software, and I'm going to be showing you some of our new developments with WROCC and WROCC. Just realised I've run them both already, so let's quit the superfluous ones. Right. So this time last year I was demonstrating the beginnings of development for our style editor in WROCC to allow you to control the style of maps. And we released that at the London show. So I'm just going to give a quick demonstration of that, but it's best to explore it yourself, I think, to see what it's capable of. There is more still to improve with the style editor, and there have been some little improvements released in the version today. All our software, by the way, is going to be available for download later this week. We haven't put the updates up on the show, on the website today. There were still some tweaks being made last night before we set off. But we've got it available to purchase for purchasing upgrades at the stand, and we have SD cards and USB sticks with the latest software and map data on if you're wanting to update your map data and don't want to download it in large quantities. So actually this is really not going to show very well, so I'm going to try zooming in a bit. What I first wanted to show you was how you can change the style of objects to make them display differently. So the features window, which acts as a key to the map, is also how you access the style editor for redesigning how bits of the map display. Now, what's happening here? Yeah, sorry. I think Ruth is tweaking with the video capture, which unfortunately isn't managing to capture the computer screen. So
it's managing to screw everything up.
So one of the things that's being shown on this map is children's playgrounds. They're a particular shade of green, and I have to say that if you don't know where they are, it's quite hard to pick them out on this map. So I'm just going to demonstrate how we can make them a bit clearer using the style editor. So I've double-clicked there to open the style editor for the playgrounds. And you'll see that at the moment we're at 1 in 20,000, which comes into this column here, zoom level 14. And at that level, we simply have a colour, an outlined area, slightly darker outline, and a coloured inside. Now we can change the colours if we want to, but one thing that will really make it stand out a bit better is by bringing in the playground symbol, which comes in later on. So if you went into a larger scale map, say 1 in 5,000, then you'd get this symbol appearing for a playground, and it would also get the name would appear at a particular text size. So we can now easily adjust where these features come in by just pulling this thing sideways, and it should now appear. You'll see this little preview at the top here. That gives you an idea as to what the item will display as. So whereas before we had, I'll just drag that back again so you can see the difference. Before we had all of those were just plain green, and then we drag that across, and now we've got the image in there. The name, as you can see, if there was a name for the playground, it wouldn't be appearing still until 1 in 5,000. We could pull that way as well, and then the name would appear. One more thing that will help with to make these things prominent is to make sure that the symbol always appears. So I'm going into this menu here to add an extra setting, and it's to do with the placement of the image. So there are many different options for image placement. We've got it set to a single image, but you can have them tiled across an area and all that kind of thing. The one I'm wanting to go for is always show, what this means is that the image that goes on the area of that feature will always be shown even if the area is so small that the image wouldn't fit on it. So there's always show can shrink, which means that the image can be scaled down to fit into the area, and there is always show, which just displays it. And hang on, I'm going to just demonstrate. We select this feature, the image, and then placement always show, and it will add an extra setting at the same zoom levels as the one which we'd selected. So it's made that happen exactly the same zoom levels. You see, you can muck around with these things as much as you want. There's a lot of fine control over the style of the maps at different scales. So having altered that, I'm going to then update the map, and we should now find that dotted around the place, it's going to be a bit hard for you to see them actually on the screen, but dotted around here and there and down there and here, and another one around there. I can see them fairly clearly on my screen in front of me. But we now have quite a few of these children's playground symbols appearing on the map, which weren't there before. Slightly clearer example, we could go for, it's funny. Let me consult my notes. Yeah, if we go in a bit further, we should be able to find some pubs. So there's a little pub sign. They're very small at this particular scale. So once we've now got a pub on view, we can double click on it to change the settings. And again, we can bring those pubs up to a higher zoom level, and we can make them appear always show. We can also put in a setting to allow them to be overlapped. So overlap allowed, which means it'll actually put several of them on top of each other if there are many of them in the same place. So here we have now quite a lot of pubs dotted around the middle of Durham. So obviously these features were all things that you would have been able to see on the map if you'd zoomed in to a large enough scale. But sometimes you want to create a map which has particular features highlighted even at a smaller scale. Now, I think arguably, if you're wanting to do a pub map of Durham, that would be a good start, but you probably want to turn off a load of other features. So we can, for example, go into the sports facilities. There we are. And just turn them off in the miniature golf and sports park, and update map, and they will disappear from the map. And so we could go through and select a whole load of other things and make them disappear from the map. And then we would end up with a much clearer map to show what we wanted to focus on. Because by default, the style sheet that you get with WROCC is a very general purpose map that's trying to show a reasonable balance of all sorts of different things. But the beauty of having a mapping system which is built like WROCC is from the OpenStreetMap data, built on your own machine using vector graphics, is that you can control precisely what goes onto that map and what it should look like. And you can save those style sheet settings. So if you're regularly doing a particular kind of map, a particular kind of display, you can save those settings as a new style, and it will make the whole job a lot easier. I see actually we've still got quite a lot of footballs there, even though I got rid of the sports field because that wasn't sufficient to get rid of the symbols that told you what it was. So anyhow, you can play with that to your heart's content. And I'll just do another little example. I'll zoom out a little bit further maybe. Sometimes the styles of things are actually interlinked. so they can inherit from a more general purpose style. So if we look up here for water features, we've got rivers and streams, and actually what you see in the style editor here, up at the top it says default style for waterway section. So there's a whole bunch of features which are classed as waterway type features. Rivers and streams and ditches and drains are all listed in this particular example here, but there could be other things as well. I think probably canals end up in here too. And the default style for the waterway section has a particular colour and a line style and also a primary text colour. So the text colour is what is used for labelling rivers. We can't see any examples. Oh yes, there is an example down here, the River Dearness over there and the River Brownie. They're both labelled in blue. I don't know whether they're classed as rivers or streams on this particular map. We could zoom in and see if we wanted to. So if we wanted to change the colour to something rather more alarming, we would find that by changing it for the whole of the waterway section, we would affect not just the rivers, but also the streams. So several different styles would be affected. And you can see down here on the left-hand side that we've got river, stream, and ditch have all changed to a rather unpleasant pink colour, which I think makes them stand out very well, but isn't really how maps are usually drawn. Once you've played around and decided that your tinkerings have actually made things worse, you can just simply go to the menu and choose an appropriate map style again, and it will ask you whether you want to save your style sheet changes under a particular name, in which case you can come back to them again in the future and tinker some more, or you can discard them. So that's the style editor, and we've got a few more plans for improving it. There are still some things that you can't alter using the style editor, which we need to add into the tool so that it's possible to do even more with that. Just go to another example. I showed you how you could pull data further forwards, as it were, so that as a smaller scale map, you get features shown which you might have otherwise had to zoom in for. We could have the opposite example. This is an area of Edinburgh where, at the 1 in 5,000 scale, we have, you can probably see them, there's a massive load of green dots all over the place because someone around Edinburgh must have done a lot of detailed work plotting all of the trees, individual trees, onto the map. So it's very detailed. If you decided that that was actually just getting a bit cluttered, you could go into the features window, find the trees wherever they are. This is where I can't actually, there we are. Land use and natural features tree, it's a little green dot. And we could push them down a little bit further so that they don't appear at this scale. But if we zoomed in further, they would then appear. So here's that map shown again. All those little green dots have disappeared. But if we go into the next zoom level down, 1 in 2,500, they will reappear because that's how we've altered the style sheet. So I hope that gives you a flavour of how that works. And the next thing I want to move on to is WROCC. So WROCC is a new add-on which works with RISC-OSM. It isn't standalone. You have to use it with RISC-OSM. And it was released at Southwest Show. And it brings images from Flickr and Google Street View to the map. So I'm just going to use Nomine, the search system, the online search system, to look for the Cedar Court Hotel. So I'm not using the built-in gazetteer with the data. This is actually going online and finding the hotel that we're in at the minute. Oh, hang on. There's a little error that is cropping up. I'm not quite sure why, so we'll ignore that for the moment. So here is the Cedar Court Hotel, and actually while we're here, there's a little enhancement, very small feature, but nonetheless welcome, I just want to tell you about. Over here by the Calder and Hebble navigation, you'll see that there is a lock with lock gates. Now, in earlier versions of WROCC, lock gates were shown as a blob on the canal. Now we've managed to do some more work, and most of the time they will now be shown with a direction, so you can see which is up and which is down, which will please anyone who goes about in canal boats, because that's exactly the sort of thing you want to know. So, Cedar Court Hotel. If we go to Find Web Photos and look for and Google Street View and fetch, it should pull in a picture from Google, and we can turn around. It's not obviously not as slick as proper Street View in your web browser, but as yet we don't have a web browser that will do that at all on WROCC, so this is quite nice. If we turn around and face along the road, you'll see it will put on markers along the road, and you can navigate along, click, and it'll move further along the road. You see, if you watch that little man there with the pin, if I click again, you'll see that he moves along the road and indicates where you are. You can equally well do the whole dragging and dropping him. So, hang on, I didn't pick him up properly. If you right drag, we can take him off to this road behind the hotel, and there we will have a view along here. Let me just show another example. We've got, as well as the Google Street View images that you get that they've done by driving their Google car along the road, there are also images that get contributed by other people. So I'm just going to look at the fourth rail bridge from here. We'll see, actually this is a picture from the fourth rail bridge of the road bridge. What I want really is a far more impressive view the other way. We'll just go over there. There we have the original fourth bridge from the road bridge. And just to go to another picturesque place, I was doing a lot of testing of this new feature in Conwy in North Wales, mainly because Hilary has Conwy Castle bookmarked on WROCC on our computer. That was partly because the castle itself had a rather complicated bit of data which didn't work in an earlier version, so she was retesting it, so she had it bookmarked. But actually we use it quite a bit still because it's very quick to load at that particular scale. So I was doing some testing because it was quick to load the map. That was where I was going. And here is one of the streets in Conwy. Now, you'll see when I hover over that cross, it turns a slightly brighter white to indicate that it really is a cross that's been put on there by WROCC rather than one that was actually there painted on the road. But also you might see over here there is a blue cross off to the right-hand side. And the blue crosses are how we were indicating these various third-party images which have been supplied. And you'll see actually we then end up inside a house. And the copyrights at the bottom no longer says copyright Google. In fact, it says copyright Marco Toschetti. And they're actually, we were quite surprised to find that along this street and neighbouring streets in Conway, there's a considerable number of these interior views of buildings. Some of them historic buildings, some of them are shops. You know, some of them I think have been done for marketing purposes. So that made it quite interesting testing it, because I would be wandering along and then end up inside a building by accident. So, I mean, it isn't as slick as real Google Street View in the browser is. One of the reasons for that is that Google doesn't give us very much information about these pictures. We get told the latitude and longitude, but we need a few more bits of information than that to make it work really well. So, for example, in order to place those crosses on the road in the right positions, ideally you need to know how high off the ground the camera was, and it seems to vary a bit between about 2.5 and 3 meters, depending on where you are in the country, but they don't tell us. And also, it would be ideal to know how high the road is when you're further ahead. And those bits of information would all really be needed in order to do the geometry to work out whereabouts on the two-dimensional photograph you need to place that cross to make it look convincing. So we've done quite a bit of testing and fiddling about to try and make this work reasonably well, but it's never going to be perfect because we don't have that information. So I think that's pretty much it for WROCC. WROCC is an add-on, as I say. It's not, you have to use it with RISC-OSM. It's £10, and the proceeds are going to the RISC-OS Open Limited TCP/IP bounty, because this has only been possible with the Acorn SSL module that was released a few months ago. So we're putting something back in there, and we have quite a few more plans for things, other services on the web that we might be able to incorporate into the map interface in a nice way. So maybe by London we'll have some more software releases to do things around there. Now, how much time have I got? Maybe 5 minutes or something? I've overrun. I've got a script here, but I've not been paying attention to the time.
You got 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, right. Well, we'll very quickly do see another feature. So I'm just going to Once Brewed, which is a wonderful name for a place just near Hadrian's Wall. Now, OpenStreetMap has, for a long time, had information about long-distance walking routes and cycle routes and bus routes sometimes, all sorts of stuff like this. But we haven't been able to display it on the map, partly because we couldn't work out quite how it ought to work. So this version released today has a feature to do just that. So you click on this little routes icon here, which will only be active if there are routes in the data. And you'll see there are several different types. Bicycle, bus, hiking, and historic are featured on this map. So historic, it says we've got the Roman road of Staingate, so we can click that. That will then be overlaid on the map. The bus route, the wonderfully numbered AD 122 bus that goes along Hadrian's Wall, goes along here. And hiking, we've got the Hadrian's Wall path and the Pennine Way. They actually overlap for a fair distance, but if we go up here nearer to Housestead's farm, Housestead's Roman fort, they split off there. I'm just going to show you, if we hover over the Pennine Way and the Hadrian's Wall path, you'll see the extra information that we have on the coming out of the data. It shows you details such as a URL for the website and things like that. Now, URLs that are in the OpenStreetMap data, we have always supported being able to click on those to open the web pages. But now we are doing more than that. Some OpenStreetMap features have a Wikidata reference. Now, Wikidata is a lesser-known friend of Wikipedia. It's a structured data source which is behind a lot of the Wikipedia systems, and we're able to interrogate Wikidata to ask for other web links pertaining to the items on the map, if they've got a Wikidata reference. So this is House Stead's Roman fort here. If I control-click on it, it will then go and retrieve those links from Wikidata, and we'll see we've got, we would have always had, I think, the link to Wikipedia for House Stead's Roman fort, and there probably was the National Trust link, because I think that's part of the data in OpenStreetMap. But this is now pulling in a link to Encyclopedia Britannica, a couple of official websites. One of them is English Heritage, the other is National Trust. And this, I think, is a specialized site relating to Roman place names and so on. So all of those could be opened. If you go to a town, we've done quite a bit of testing in Durham, of course. There are often links to directories of listed buildings, architectural information, websites, all sorts of stuff. So that's now in the release today, and so you'll find the web links are now a lot richer. And then one final little demo, very, very quickly. We had a request from someone in the Netherlands who was wanting to plot CSV data. Now, we've been able to load in CSV files with latitude and longitude for quite a long time. But what he wanted to do was to be able to set the color of the pins that resulted according to, he's got a device that he's using to measure radio interference. And so he's driving along in the car and making all these measurements. And we can now set the color and indeed the diameter of pins using the data in a CSV file. So if you've got some geographical application like that, where you might want to plot some stuff on the map, maybe change the sizes of these circles and the colors, you can do that. As you can see here, there's various shades of blue and green that have been produced using the data that he has recorded using his measuring device, and that's been plotted onto an area there. I don't know what the red means, there's only one of them, but it makes quite an interesting visualization of that. And if you've got other scientific data, or there's all sorts of things that could be plotted on like that. So it's just another little feature we've added. The request came out of the blue just before the Southwest Show and said, oh, well, we'll get back to it after the Southwest Show. We forgot about it completely. He got in touch and said, how's it going? And Hilary felt a bit embarrassed, but I think it was the week before last, she put a couple of evenings in on it and got it working. So it wasn't a massive amount of work, but it's a nice little feature which will be very useful for some people. So I think that's it for me today, and do come and see us on the stand if there's anything more you want to know.
A couple of questions, if you
Yeah? Mm-hmm.
Questions?
Could you demonstrate plotting a little walk around one of those footpaths?
Oh, right.
That sounded a bit tricky.
Yeah. Let me just go back to, this is quite a busy map because the Netherlands is extremely well mapped. So I'm just going to whiz back to near Hadrian's Wall again. So are you talking about the tracing feature? Yeah. So down here you can draw lines freely, or you can restrict the lines that it will follow according to the type of vehicle or person you are. So if we go for walker, it will then try to follow try to follow the ways and routes that people can walk along. So you start off by clicking where you want to start, and it will then try and follow the route. Now, you have to keep reasonably close to the route that you're following. The other thing that it's worth doing is clicking occasionally. If you're going the right way, if it's following you the way you want it to, then click from time to time, and store that, and then the red line will just be from where you got to. If you try going too far, say like this, then you might find this little, you see, it's then lost all of that bit because I went far too close to where I'd been before and decided perhaps I didn't want to go the long way round. So if you do want to go a particular route, click from time to time, and that should do it. Oh, the trouble is there are sometimes little breaks. I'm wondering here whether there's maybe, perhaps there isn't a path along here. Ah, okay. Yeah, so sometimes you do need to zoom in a little bit further. What's this here? That's a road. Okay, we can go along that road. What particular aspects have you found tricky? Is there anything... Yeah, I mean, it can be a little bit quirky, and sometimes you need to zoom in a bit so you can see what you're doing. But it's quite nice, and when you get it working, you know, you can select this route, and it will give it a name by default. You can export it as a GPX file if you want to follow it in a phone or a tracking device. And also you can see it will give you a gradient profile based on the contours on the map, if you want to see how hilly the route is going to be and that kind of thing. It's only approximate, but it's not too bad. Any other questions, or?
A request for a feature, really. One thing I often do is to type in 1 million, for example, and then I go away and have a sleep and come back.
Oh, a 1 in 1 million map?
Or 1 in 500. But basically, I do a map and I can't get a context. So I want a context.
Yes.
I'd like a fast way of getting a context, which means basically I've thought of actually going through all the data and stripping out most of it, so I've only got a bit left.
Yes.
It would be better if you could do that for me.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Small scale maps are very tricky because you could lose a lot of features. That would be one way to speed them up. Oh, I know. Masses and masses.
If it was only 3 megabytes of data coming in, it would be much quicker to draw that sort of skeleton map.
It would be. So one way to do it would be to throw out features at smaller scales, or just not load them in. I mean, you know, not load them in. So supposing we only included major roads, railway lines, and cities, yeah, that might work quite well. But then there are quite large chunks of the country where those things just aren't very common. And so you might start thinking, well, perhaps we ought to include woodland as well, because otherwise it's not clear that this part of the country is full of wood. I usually try to drive somewhere. Yeah. I'm going to walk. So what we ought to do is think about a conversion where we've kind of stripped down everything to a very small number of features. Now, the other problem is that at the moment we don't do any simplification of the roads until they're loaded in. So, for example, at the moment the data will have all of the intermediate points loaded in, even if those are only, say, 400 or 500 yards apart. There might be a slight kink in the road from time to time, and all of the OpenStreetMap data is made up of straight lines, so some of it's quite short. So when we load the data in, before rendering it on the screen, we actually work out which of those points are going to be immaterial for making the data displayed on the draw file, and we throw them out before rendering. But they do have to be loaded in because we only have one version of the road.
We do not have a utility which does that and saves away a different data.
Yeah, so we could have a different set of data without so much detail in. That would be worth experimenting with. Yeah, we ought to have a go at that. One of the things that's been difficult, of course, is that it takes so long to convert the data in the first place that tweaking it to see, oh, well, that's a bit better. Let's convert it again, and that'll take another 24 hours, and then we'll see whether that was an improvement. Oh, bother, it wasn't. We should make a slightly different tweak. It's a very long development process. But I take the point. We ought to have a look at doing that. We've got some ideas. We've had ideas about whether perhaps at the smaller scales we should have a simplified version of a road that would be stored at a smaller scale, and then when you come into a larger scale, it will load in extra points. But we haven't got any way of doing that in the data structure at the moment. But that might be a way of having the best of both worlds. The difficulty with having a totally different data set is at the moment, if the data sets overlap geographically, it prefers one over another. What we would need to do is have a way of saying, well, for this scale, use this data set. For that scale, use another data set. So yeah, that's a good idea, and we ought to put in some time experimenting, even though it is going to be a long job to actually make it work well. That's true. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it is very much more helpful for larger scales, such as 1 in 50,000 and more detailed than that. But for zooming out, it can get quite slow.
No, I get a ramble saying it's about 30 or 40 miles from where I am. And so the wife says, well, where is it? I said, oh, no, just a minute. Go away and come back.
Yes, yes.
I've got to see my house, and I've got to see the place where I want to get to.
Yeah. Yes, I quite understand. Yeah, we ought to have a go at that. I'll add it to the list, because it's been asked a few times, maybe not as many times as you might think, but I don't know, perhaps people don't demand stuff much. We're quite happy to have ideas thrown at us, and we'll see what we can do.
I'm impressed with the lock feature because of this very same reason. I waited 5 minutes for it to come in, and I moved it by accident. And it was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, so you may not know, you've got this lock down here, and you can actually now turn it on automatically, so that every time you draw a map, it will lock. What the lock does is it means it stops you from dragging or zooming in or zooming out. Or it stops zooming in and out with the mouse, which is more likely to be accidental. The plus and minus signs still work. And so if you're doing a very big map and it's taking a long time, put that lock on, and then you won't be at any risk of it deciding to throw the whole lot away and have another 3 hours building it before you've been able to appreciate the output.
And on that, we need to wind up. Thank you
Okay, thank you.
very much. Thank you.